William Clouston's here. William, he's right, isn't he, to say that this workers' rights bill is going to be very damaging to business in this country, which is already on its knees, thanks to the national insurance rise, which is coming in April, thanks to all the other taxes that have been put on, particularly small businesses. It's not a very good economic outlook, is it?
No, it all goes back to the terrible start they had. Doom and gloom, because they wanted to make a sort of tax grab, and they justified that by saying there was the black hole. And it's been doom and gloom ever since.
Right.
So yeah, but it's not just what they say. The mood music was bad, and that has a downward effect anyway on the economy. But for things like hospitality and small businesses, you put the NI on, you put the taxes on, and they're just trying to squeeze the tax base, squeeze it as hard as they can, and ultimately there's only a certain amount you can get out.
Yeah, exactly. And everything is going up. I mean, we've got energy prices going up in the next month as well, with the energy price cap being raised, I think, for the third time under this Labour government, despite the fact that they promised a £300 rebate. That didn't happen. And also, they're not mentioning this black hole anymore. Ever since Keir Starmer's rediscovered the military, which I don't think Labour have had in mind since the last time Tony Blair was around and wanted to invade Iraq illegally. They're suddenly going, oh, we don't have a black hole anymore, we can find all this money.
Well, they've spent 12 or 13 billion on the Ukraine war, and you can argue the rights and wrongs of that if you like, but it's interesting, isn't it, the politicians always, as a rule, find money if they want something for their pet project. So if it's winter fuel allowances or something they don't like, they'll cut it and make people suffer. And as soon as it's something they want, suddenly the money's there. And as if by magic.
Yes, I know. And what do you make of Keir Starmer today? Because my view is that he looks a little bit stupid. He looks a little bit isolated. He went through this whole glad-handing thing with Donald Trump last Thursday, which was pretty embarrassing, frankly. I mean, I was cringing watching it when we said that on Friday, touching him on the shoulder, trying to be all pally with him.
A little letter from the king.
A little letter from the king.
Present for you.
It was all very sort of performative and cringe-making, to be honest. Then, of course, he decides that after the bust-up on Friday, he's going to act as the peacemaker. He invites Zelensky into London, then sends him off to see the king, then brings all these European leaders in, starts talking about coalitions of the willing, and it's all turned to dust, really, because he's out of the game, he's out of the picture.
Yeah, it's pompous, isn't it? I was cringing. I mean, both of those Oval Office events were bad for different reasons, weren't they? Starmer was just complete cringe. And actually, if you only have to go back a few years and listen to what Starmer and his foreign secretary said about Trump to know what they really think.
Yes.
So it's like everything else on Starmer.
Of course.
It's actually classic Starmer, isn't it? He slags the guy off and then says, oh, I'm your best mate.
Yeah, I'm your best mate. I'm patting you and I'm laughing, even though I don't really normally laugh, and it looks really, really awkward.
Really awkward,
It was just embarrassing. I thought, I mean, I said this on Friday, it's embarrassing for Britain to have somebody like that, and for his judgment to be so bad. And of course, all of his, detractors, sort of, faded away and suddenly came behind him and went, oh, suddenly Keir Starmer's found a great
Do you know why they did that?
Why?
Because there are too many people in Britain that have this sort of outdated, pompous view of this special relationship, and they're so good, and the Americans really value us so much, and we're in this situation, and they delude themselves. Say on Ukraine, the shots have been called by Vance and Trump, and they will decide what happens when and where.
Right. That's exactly how it's played out.
Exactly how it's played out, and it's awful, but this is the reality, I'm afraid. And yet, actually, Starmer just completely jumped the gun. And talk about coalition of the willing. He managed to convene those Europeans, and he obviously wants to get back into Europe. He wants to be back at the top table.
But that's why they came, because had it been Boris Johnson, they probably wouldn't have.
Very possible. But the thing is that it's the coalition of the willing and unwilling, because a lot of those states will not.
It's more like coalition of the wilting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. No, it's. I'm afraid it's an awful situation. But anyone that comments, and you've seen this on social media, anyone that comments on the Russia-Ukraine war now, people on Twitter will put you in a pro-Putin camp immediately, and say you're a warmonger. Or you're a warmonger.
Yeah.
And in fact, in reality, we face in the real world awful dilemmas. They're awful choices.
Of course.
Trump may well succeed in what people would call a dishonourable peace. It's quite likely, if that peace happens, that Ukraine will be partitioned.
But the dial always moves. I mean, I was speaking to Keir, who comes in on a regular basis as a Ukrainian MP, leader of the Voice Party, who's not a big fan of Zelensky's, actually. But I could tell just by talking to her yesterday that there is now a growing number of people in Ukraine who realise that an acceptable form of peace might actually include giving some land to Russia. And part of that agreement will be to do with the land that Russia believes that it's entitled to in the first place.
And the land it now holds, and it is an awful situation, it is a dilemma, but you've got to weigh that, and the people on the other side that are saying, you know, fight on another 10 years, or the problem is that is it morally superior actually to get Ukraine to fight an unwinnable war for another 10 years and still get nowhere?
Right.
That's the problem. That's what in reality.
I personally don't think it is, but it's my opinion,
Yeah.
and that's what we do here. It's all about opinions. You know, it's not about who's right and who's wrong. But some people see it like that as well.
Whatever you say, Trump will decide.
Yeah.
And he's actually the speed. You know, this blitzkrieg sort of right. I'll stop your. If they have no intelligence support. The analysts say it's a matter of months. So no, that'll focus my. This is the real world that we live in now. And
this is the thing about Starmer. I mean, Starmer's busy selling this line to people like Sky, who are busy reporting it, that it was his influence that led Zelensky to write a letter to Trump.
I think that's nonsense.
It is, of course it's nonsense. Yeah. But he's also been forced to admit that he made a phone call to Donald Trump on Monday night, shortly before the aid was pulled, and he didn't even know it was happening because Trump didn't tell him.
No.
And that tells you more about the relationship than anything.
I'm afraid it does. Yeah, it's a sort of it's Europe. Someone wrote, actually Michael Taylor wrote recently, that it's Europe's Suez moment.
Yeah,
you're being told brutally who really has the power, and it's not Starmer, and it's not Europe actually.
And actually, I read, and I've said this a few times on the show already. Yesterday, a great piece in the Times by William Hague, who I don't normally read, and I don't normally support much of what he thinks, really, because he's one of the wets that kind of destroyed the Tory party.
Yeah.
However, he was explaining in what I thought was a really interesting way that much of what Trump is driven by now is waste in government.
Yeah.
So he's got this whole Doge operation going on with Elon Musk. He sees Ukraine as exactly part of that because too much money has been sent there for no apparent purpose, because nothing's really happened. You know, no gains have been made. The war is not any closer.
If it's unwinnable,
and even when Zelensky said, I think on Saturday, that war is the peace is even further away now than ever. That it really concentrated his mind, and he went, well, what we're not doing is sending you another $300 billion.
And there is and again, something that people, particularly on social media, have forgotten about entirely, is that there is a democratic aspect to this. Remember that Trump, and particularly Vance, but Trump also, was elected on this platform.
Yes.
The American people voted for a president, wanted to end this war. Vance is on record as saying they should never have helped in the first place.
Right.
You know, so they're pretty clear what the Americans were voting for, and they're getting pretty much what they voted for.
Absolutely right. Well, should we get a clip from what he was saying about the Social Security problem when we talk about our Social Security problem? But have a look at this, what they've got.
But a lot of money is paid out to people because it just keeps getting paid, and nobody does, and it really hurts Social Security and hurts our country. 1.3 million people from ages 150 to 159, and over 130,000 people, according to the Social Security databases, are age over 160 years old. We have a healthier country than I thought, Bobby.
And that's Robert Kennedy, of course, there. I mean, you know, he makes a great point. And you can't tell me that we don't have the same problem, because...
I'm afraid, Mike, we have the same problem.
Because the bureaucracy that we have created has led to systems which are failing and inoperable and don't work.
Yeah, so, I mean, we talk about DEI and things, all that should be scrapped, all that stuff. And then get a hold of your border and get out the ECHR. That would save you billions, and that would stop all that chaos. But actually, a lot of this has deeper roots, which actually the guy sitting behind Trump there totally understands Vance, which is in deindustrialization. What has happened, and this is why the tariffs are such a big issue, what has happened in the Anglosphere, in America and here, is that we've deindustrialized, the jobs have been shipped off to China, we've gutted the Midlands and the North, and a deindustrialized town is a phenomenally expensive thing. You know, some of these towns, 20% of the public, adults, are on out-of-work benefits. You've got drug epidemics, you've got all sorts of social breakdowns.
And
so
add into that the immigrants.
Yeah,
right?
of course. You know, in putting pressure on social housing and all the rest of it. So, you know, one of the reasons this country's total welfare bill is projected to be sort of 371 billion this year. It's the biggest single thing. Is because of that failure. So unless we can get investment and industry back, you will have this doom loop of having to spend money, what I call mopping up the blood, and that's what's happening. A lot of that is what Trump's talking about as well. And I think he'll win the tariff war, actually.
Oh, I think he will. Totally. Yeah. Again, everybody who argues against him ends up realising that actually he's right.
Yeah.
And even the lefties here, who absolutely detest the idea that he gets things right and he gets things done, don't know what to do. One story I did want to get a thought from you on, and nearly 1 million people in Britain now, piece in the Sun today, can't speak English.
Yeah.
You know, and 138,000 of them can't speak any English at all.
Yeah. Well,
it's got to be a worry, isn't it?
It's there's lots of roots to this. I mean, it's not just the problem of integration. We're not asking them to. There's no effort to integrate, and we're not making any effort to make them integrate and speak English. And then when they turn up and want social services and medical services, we provide millions, literally millions, tens of millions, on language and translation. And actually, Rupert Lowe's, you know, been highlighting that as well. So unless you apply some pressure, if you want this service, you might actually have to learn English.
Exactly right, because of course the lefties' response to it is, well, when you go to Spain, you expect everybody to speak English. Well, that's not the point. I'm not moving to Spain, and neither am I moving to any other place I go.
Falamos português when I'm in Portugal.
There you go. And actually, I do try to speak the local language, but it is ridiculous. Mind you, here's one place that perhaps the Speaker of the House hasn't been, but he should visit on his worldwide trip as you know, the
first class
ambassador. This is the Serbian Parliament yesterday,
where
they had a bit of a disagreement. And suddenly it looked like the terraces of Dynamo Zagreb, where they're chucking you know, fire bombs and flash bang fireworks at each other and holding up flares. Absolutely extraordinary. Looks like an episode of the old Cup Winners' Cup, doesn't it?
It's astonishing, isn't it? Yeah, I went to see Ferencvaros play Newcastle United a few years ago. It was a little bit like that, actually.
Very similar. But no messing about. Anyway, listen, great to see you.
Good, thank you.
Very nice to see William Clouston there, always talking common sense, which is very welcome here at Talk and on Morning Glory, in particular leader of the SDP, the Social Democrats, a very sensible party.